So yeah, we were discussing earlier today on how does one go from industry 3.0, if you will, to industry 4.0, from simply not consuming any data from the production all the way to automated production and processes. What is the roadmap? How do we get there? And what is the value that we accumulate and accrue in each step of the way? And I heard someone say on LinkedIn, growing from legacy to legendary. How does that work?
Okay, thanks, Philip. Of course, there is not one rule fits all. It really depends on the domain, on the strategy that you want to achieve, the final goal. But let's say there are some layers that you can tackle in a, let's say, a reasonable or logic way, or step by step. So of course you go from the very first step, the very first layer is to connect your data, to have data and connect your data in real time, potentially to a platform that orchestrates different kind of technologies. So not only IoT, but also artificial intelligence, and of course, the ability to really interact with your data, not just to visualize them. So yeah, as I said, first layer, connect your data, be able to visualize them, and what we call smart monitoring, basically, that this would be the second layer. So be able to visualize your data, maybe in a digital twin, for example, give context to your data, centralize your data, see the interaction between the different processes, between the different assets. Then we move forward to what we normally call the descriptive layer, or root cause analysis. So we try to make sense of what is actually happening right now in the data. What are the data showing us? And why something is happening. Could be a quality issue or a failure. So this is actually called the descriptive layer. And then once we know what is happening, we can try to prevent it, to predict it. So we have an additional layer that is the predictive one. So we can predict failure, we can predict anomaly to be able to take action before they actually happens and create a downtime or unexpected stoppage. After the preventive layer, then we have what we call the prescriptive layer, or basically the recommendation stage, where the AI, where the algorithm, where the logic, the intelligence is able to send recommendation to avoid those specific issues to happen, for example. But when we, at the level of recommendation, there is still the human being involved to evaluate whether these recommendations are good or not. For example, a recommendation could be input this value into the set point. Of course, there is still a human layer that will evaluate whether this value makes sense or not. And then the final step, which of course is the one that brings more value. I mean, this chain of layers, the more we go up, the more value it brings in terms of ROI, is the automation layer. So basically the logic, the algorithm, or whatever we want to call it, is able to manage, to control, to input and output values out in the asset. So this would be, let's say, ideally, of course, in a perfect world, the different layers going from having nothing to automation.
Okay. We always talk about predictive maintenance, and I hear people a lot of people that I kind of interact with LinkedIn, they describe predictive maintenance as a low-hanging fruit, something that's rather easily achievable, and therefore a lot of solution providers kind of go for that as their main selling point. However, predictive, that's why I prefer the term predictive analytics, sort of an umbrella term encompassing not only maintenance, but also quality. Some people even coin the term quality 4.0, for instance. What are some of the benefits? What are some of the benefits that predictive analytics AI can bring to a business outside of maintenance?
Well, for example, you mentioned quality. Predicting quality, predicting whether a defect will happen or not, or there will be likelihood that a specific defect happens on the line, will give the knowledge to the operators and to engineer to adapt the different variables on the line. If we know that, for example, the algorithm predict that oxidation will happen on the line. So in that case, the operators know what action to take in order to avoid this oxidation to happen. Of course, this is due to the knowledge, to the experience or wisdom that the operator has. So, for example, if there is oxidation, sometimes the operators slow down the line. This is potential way to avoid oxidation to form. Of course, then you lose in yield, you lose in output. If the line goes less fast, then it's reflected on the output. But these things can also be done by the logic itself. And here we loop back to automation. If the system predicts that there will be oxidation in an automated AI control loop, the logic itself, the AI, will take action to avoid that oxidation is actually happening. Okay. So somehow all these steps are connected to each other. It's just the level of maturity or the level of advancement that we set as a final target. Okay. And we always recommend, based on our experience, is always better to go step by step. Of course, we can also shoot immediately for automation. Depends a bit on the stakeholders, the strategy of the company, the resources also in terms of money that are available. But normally something gradual is the way to go.
What do companies that are fully automated, so they've reached the very end step of this roadmap, what do they stand to gain, if anything, from Industry 4.0, or are they already Industry 5.0? Are they, or are we looking into the next step of digitalization, if you will?
Well, the natural way forward after automation is, of course, to replicate and scale the same technology or the same logic to other equipment, to other assets, to other geolocation within the corporate. Of course, scalability is something that you can do at each step. It doesn't have to happen specifically only when you have automation in place. It can be done with root cause. It can be done with with predictive maintenance, and so on and so forth. But of course, ideally, let's say you automate a kiln or you automate a blast furnace, then you can easily. The next step would be to scale up to replicate the same to a similar technology, a similar oven. Of course, this will always require a little bit of adaptation of the algorithm because each oven or each asset is slightly different, maybe different generation, maybe different kind of data. So there will always be a little bit of flexibility, a little bit of fine-tuning necessary. But it's way easier to use something that already exists and adapt rather than restart from scratch.
Okay. So in conclusion, I suppose there's a lot of work to be done. Depending on where you are within the spectrum, what step you are in, there is a pathway forward and always a way to further kind of optimize your production and gain value from data coming from your assets. So yeah, thanks, Martina, for having coffee with me today, and whoever else wants to join every Wednesday at 3 p.m. is welcome. 3 p.m. Central European time, So adjust your clocks and watches, and looking forward to having you.